right, good morning, everyone that's here. It is 10 o'clock. So Daniel, I took your video off so you can put it back on now if you'd like. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for being here on a Saturday morning. If you can't hear me for some reason, there is a raise hand function on this. You can raise your hand if for any reason you're having problems hearing. But welcome, and again, thank you for being here on a Saturday morning and being interested in the district election process here at the city. Just want to let you know we are recording this, just to go back to if anyone wants to look at it after the workshop today. And I'll just wait for Daniel to put up his video before I introduce him. But
I can't turn on my video. You need to enable me that.
Okay, just one second. Probably something I did. There we go. So I'm Jessica Matson. I'm the City of Arroyo Grande city clerk and very involved in the election process here. I'm the elections official for the City of Arroyo Grande. And with me today is Daniel Phillips, and he is our consultant and demographer with National Demographics Corporation. So how this will go today, really the workshop is for you guys, for everyone attending. We will give a brief overview of the process of district elections and kind of why we're doing this, and answer any questions you have, and then kind of open it up and receive any feedback you may have about areas of the city that you consider a community or what we call a community of interest. And then really we're here also to assist you with your map. If you have questions on how to do it, we can show you paper maps. We can also show you an online tool to draw your maps. So when we get to that point, we'll be able to share screens and kind of go over your map if you have one already, or just show you the tools. Okay, so Daniel, I'll kick it over to you to just kind of give a brief overview of what we're doing here.
Great, thank you. And let me share my screen and pull up this PowerPoint. So this is a public workshop on districting. And so we're going to describe the process a little bit, but also provide some time to train on the tools and allow people to get familiar with the ways that they can be involved in this process. So just to briefly explain why we're doing this, we have 3 election systems that a city like Arroyo Grande can implement. There's the at-large system, which has been the system that the city has used up until now, which is where voters across the city vote for their city council members, and they can vote for all of the city council members, and it doesn't matter where the city council members live. And there's that's known as the at-large method. There's a hybrid system called the from district system, where a city council member has to live in a certain area, but they can still be voted on by residents across the city. The third system is called the by district system, and that is the one where you have designated areas that city council members have to live in, but on top of that, they can only be voted on by residents of that district. So the consequence of that is that voters in the city only have one vote for a particular city council person. And so this is the system that the city is moving to. And the reason why is because of this legislation that was passed. It's called the California Voting Rights Act. And that law was written to specifically encourage by district elections. And what the law did was make it much easier to be held liable for what's called racially polarized voting if you stick with an at-large system. And the law provides legal safety for jurisdictions that use the by-district system. And so in order to protect themselves from the threat of any lawsuit and having to pay lots of money defending themselves or settling these cases, jurisdictions like Arroyo Grande, hundreds of jurisdictions across the state are moving to this by-district system. And so when jurisdictions move to by-district elections for the first time, they had to follow a particular process that is outlined by state law. And state law requires at least 4 public hearings. Now, there can be more. And so Arroyo Grande is going above and beyond by having, in addition to the 4 required public hearings, they're also holding public workshops like we're having this morning. So the first 2 hearings took place earlier this summer, and these were held at city council meetings. And the law actually states that these have to take place before any draft maps are presented to the council. And so these were held to educate on the process and solicit input on neighborhoods and communities of interest in the city. Now we are going to have these 2 workshops, one today and another on October 28th. And these are designed to provide training on public mapping tools and guidance on drawing maps. And so members of the public will have the opportunity to submit their own draft maps. Many already have, and there's still time to do so. In fact, you have all the way until February 4th to submit draft maps. And that is the cutoff date to allow us, your demographers, time to process all the submissions and present them in a common format and release them, post them onto the city's districting website. That will be on February 15th. And so that will allow time for people to go to the website and look at all the submissions before the first of 2 public hearings that are supposed to take place after the draft maps are posted. And these will be to discuss and revise the draft maps if necessary, and to discuss the election sequence. So basically which council members will end up in which district and what the term cycles would look like. And lastly, the council will choose one of those maps to formally adopt on March 22nd.
Can I pause just right here? If anyone has questions so far, I promoted you all to be able to talk. So if you have a question, feel free to jump in. I know that was a lot of information, so I want to make sure that we get some questions in if needed. All right, Linda, it looks like, go ahead, you can talk.
Yeah, so I'm just needing a clarification. The new map will be approved by the city council only. The supervisors won't have any input?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then Janice, you have your hand up too.
Yes, I'm wondering, I've lived in Arroyo Grande, right off Grand Avenue for the past 31 years. And I have not known, I'm wondering what the criteria is to divide into these different districts. I don't see that Arroyo Grande, aside from the very wealthy that live in Arroyo Grande, I mean, economically, I can see different classes of people, but I don't see areas that are ethnically divided particularly. So I'd like to have that addressed a bit. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, and I will get into that in the next slide, and also when going through the story map and showing you what the different demographics look like throughout the city.
Okay.
Are there any more questions, or can I continue?
Looks like no one else has they're not unmuted or have their hand raised. So I think we can move forward. Thanks.
Okay, great. So the last questioner mentioned criteria. And so this slide shows the criteria that all cities that are moving to district elections have to follow. And so there are kind of three brackets of criteria. The first are those that come from federal law. The second are those that come from state law. And the third is other traditional districting principles that are not legally required, but may be implemented nonetheless. So turning to the first one, the federal criteria is that the districts have equal population. They don't have to be exactly equal, but they should be pretty equal. There's some wiggle room, but not a lot. And then second is to follow the Federal Voting Rights Act by not diluting the voting strength of any racial or ethnic minority group. And but on the flip side, not practicing what is called racial gerrymandering, where you make race or ethnicity the only or main consideration when drawing these districts. And so in a little bit, I'll show the demographics of the city to show where there might be concentrations of certain racial or ethnic minorities. So that's the federal criteria. And then once you make sure you follow that, then you can look at the state criteria. And the thing to note about the state criteria is that it's a rank order. So you'll see the 1, 2, 3, 4. That means that if it's not possible to satisfy all of these, then you want to privilege the higher priority ones. So the highest priority is that the districts be geographically contiguous, meaning they're one piece each. They're not disconnected pieces. So that's criteria number 1. Number 2 is to not divide neighborhoods or communities of interest, which are socioeconomic geographic areas that should be kept together. And I'll get into that concept a little bit more. But number 3 is to follow easily identifiable boundaries, such as creeks and highways and major roads and major features that are easily identifiable like that. And number 4 is to make districts that are compact in that they do not bypass one group of people to get to a more distant group of people. So those are all the criteria that the state has mandated. But on top of that, they add this prohibition. The districts shall not favor or discriminate against a political party. So we're not supposed to take any partisan data into account. We're just looking at totally nonpartisan considerations. And so once you have made sure that the districts are following the federal and state law, then you may also consider these principles. The first is, you might call it respecting voters' choices or continuity in office. And the idea here is to, you may want to try to avoid putting 2 or more incumbent council members in the same district so that you don't force one to leave just because of the way the lines are drawn, but you leave it up to voters to decide whether each has earned re-election. And so that could be a consideration, but it could not be. And then lastly, if there's any future population growth that is expected, then you might want to account for that slightly by maybe underpopulating a particular district to a slight extent, while not straying too far from the equal population mandate from federal law. So I'll pause here to see if there are any questions about all these criteria, because I know this is a lot to digest as well.
All right, go ahead, Linda. Or actually, no, it looks like Adrian, sorry.
Hi. So I heard Daniel say we need to prevent diluting the power of any racial minorities in Arroyo Grande. But I guess my question is, how do we measure that? Like, how do we prevent that from happening as we design our maps? What kind of things should we be looking for?
Yes, that's a very good question, and something that I will show using the story map. I will show where you might be able to find certain concentrations of racial or ethnic minority groups. And what you would want to do is avoid splitting that concentration. So what are often talked about are packing and cracking. So you want to avoid doing each of those when it comes to satisfying the Federal Voting Rights Act. So packing is when you put all the racial or ethnic minorities in one district so that they have no voice or influence in any other district. Cracking is where you split them up into a bunch of different districts so that they have a very weak voice or influence in each of those districts. And so the Federal Voting Rights Act prohibits both of those. And so what I'll show is where you would find such a concentration and what you can do to avoid either packing or cracking.
Any other questions about this? Okay.
So one of the state criteria mentions not dividing neighborhoods. And so this is an important concept that we want to define in your city. What are the neighborhoods that are important to people? And what are their geographic boundaries? Because we need to know the spatial extent of these neighborhoods so that we can ensure that we're not dividing them when drawing these district lines. And so you see examples of physical features that might define a neighborhood boundary, such as highways, major roads, rivers, canals, and/or hills. You can think of neighborhoods as areas around parks or schools, or being defined by other neighborhood landmarks, such as a community center or a historic church or a city hall, something like that. So we hope to receive public testimony about what the neighborhoods are within the city that we should be aware of. But if we don't get that public testimony, we also have planning records and other similar documents that may provide that definition. But going beyond neighborhoods, we also have this term community of interest. And so when we're talking about a community of interest, we're like neighborhoods, we're talking about a geographic area, but that is combined with some shared issue or characteristic. Often social or economic interest that is impacted by city policies. So we want to hear about what these communities might be so that we can make sure that we are aware of them when drawing these boundaries. But importantly, we want to know if the community would benefit from being included within a single district for purposes of its effective and fair representation. Because the law only says that we have to keep it undivided if it would indeed benefit from just being in one district. There could be examples of districts that would benefit more from having multiple representatives. But we're not, when we're talking about communities of interest, we're not talking about any partisan considerations. So this is a demographic summary of the city, and you'll see that we have a lot of information here. We covering everything from age, immigration status. We have income and household stats. We have voter turnout and registration. And we have a racial ethnic breakdown by citizen voting age population. And we're looking here at citizen voting age population because the courts have said that when it comes to following the Federal Voting Rights Act, at least in California, this is the key data point to look at. And so we're just considering among the 14,000 people who are eligible to vote, what the racial ethnic breakdown is among those. And we see here that close to 4/5 are non-Hispanic white, 13% are Hispanic, and 5% Asian, and 1% Black. The total population of the city is just over 18,000. So this would include children and non-citizens in addition to the 14,000 we have here. This is an estimated total because we're still awaiting the official data from the state, but we do expect that very soon. And so if we take this 18,132 number and divide that by 4 districts, we would get about 4,500 people in each district. And so this is the ideal population value that we're looking for each of the districts, at least based on the estimated numbers we have now. And so you can check out the story map for maps of some of this demographic data like language and income, et cetera. And so the story map is actually one of several public mapping and map review tools that we've made available. We have different tools for different purposes and for different levels of comfort and interest. And all of these tools are found at the website of arroyogrande.org/district elections. So we have 4 tools on offer. The first is a simple learn about your community story map, which I'll show in a little bit. Then we have simple review draft maps, interactive review map. And that will be where you can actually, all the draft maps that come in will be posted on that interactive review map. And you also have all the data from the story map that is there as well. Then we have paper and Excel-based simple draw draft map tools that many of you have taken advantage of already, but I'll briefly show those as well, just in case anyone might not be familiar. And lastly, we have an easy to use online draw your neighborhood or draw draft map tool, and that's called District R. So those are the tools that are available to you, but whatever you choose to use, whether it be the online mapping tool, Excel, the paper map, or just draw on a napkin, we welcome your maps and we'll make sure that every submission we receive will eventually go to the city council. So I'm now going to exit the presentation so that I can go to the website and show you the different mapping tools. But before I do that, I'll just pause to ask if there are any more questions.
Okay, seeing no questions, we'll just go right into it.
Okay, so You should be able to see the district elections website now. And there's a nice YouTube video here that kind of explains the process in a fun animated way. And you'll see the list of upcoming events, including today's workshop. And you'll see we have another workshop coming up on the October 28th. And you'll see how you can participate by submitting written testimony to public comment at arroyogrande.org. You can access reports and presentations from before. And you'll be able to see the mapping tools that are available. So the first of these is the story map. So the story map looks like this. It's kind of a presentation where you can scroll down and see all sorts of data about the city. And the first data that you can see here is citizen voting age population by race, ethnicity. And what you'll do is scroll down until you find these buttons. And you can click on one of these buttons to see where a particular racial or ethnic group is concentrated. So I'll click on % Latino, and that should pop up a color scheme. And you can see what the colors symbolize by looking to the left here. And you'll see that the warmer colors mean that you have higher percentages of Latinos who are eligible to vote. So those reds, oranges, and greens. And you can see that there really aren't too many concentrations of Latinos in Arroyo Grande. There's scattered pockets, but nothing that's too much of a concentration. But if you look at percent total minority, so this is a combination of Latinos, Asians, Blacks, Native Americans, and any group that would be considered a racial or ethnic minority group. You do see when you look over in this part of the city, there's a slight concentration of non-white voters. And so perhaps this might be considered a group, an area that would probably, you would want to probably avoid cracking this area, because there seems to be a higher proportion of minority voters in this section of the city. I don't think that packing would be a problem in this circumstance, because even if you could pack them all into one district, they still wouldn't make up the majority of a single district. And so that, I think, is something to be mindful of when thinking about how best to follow the Federal Voting Rights Act. But it's still important to keep in mind that we're only talking about at the most 35 to 50% in this area. We do see some 75 to 100%, but these are very, very small blocks with very few people living in them. So it wouldn't really qualify as being a concentration or a cluster of a racial or ethnic minority group. So that's a key data point to be aware of. Others are, we have other demographics as well. So you can look at % families with children and see that this area has more families with children as well, although you do see that toward the east as well. If you want to look at income, you'll see that you have higher income people to the east, as well as up here in the hills, and lesser in the parts on the other side of the freeway. Percent college graduates, you have slightly more college graduates toward the east. Percent multifamily housing, you have slightly more of people who live in apartments in this southwest area of the city. And percent renter housing, you also see a slightly higher concentration in the southwest area, as well as around the village. If you scroll down here, you'll see population units. And these are units that you'll see on the paper map. And what we've done is put them on the story map as well. So you can see what the population units look like. And you'll see that you can look at their ID numbers or their population counts. And you can even look at individual census blocks and their population counts. Some local data that might be of interest are zoning areas. So you can see that there are different ways that the city has classified different areas based on their zoning. And if you want to see what the colors mean, you click on this button at the bottom left corner, and that will show you what each of the colors symbolize. So you'll see that the purple indicates public facilities, greens are agriculture, yellows are residential, and then you have this blue, which the city has actually designated an area that is the village. So you have the core of the village is the dark blue, and then mixed use is medium blue, and village residential is light blue. So everything in blue, the city considers to be the village.
Is it Michael or Nicole? I see you have your microphone unmuted. Did you have a question?
No, I got a notice that the host had asked me to unmute.
Oh, I think I was moving you just in case you wanted to speak later. So feel free to mute yourself if you don't want to speak. Thank you.
Yeah, so the other thing to note about the story map is you can pan around by clicking and dragging, and you can zoom in and zoom out by clicking the plus or minus at the bottom right. So as I continue to scroll, I can show where elementary school attendance areas are to be found. So again, you can click on the legend to see what the colors signify. But you can see that most of the city falls in either the Ocean View or the Harlow elementary school attendance areas, as well as Branch to the east. And there's also pieces of other school attendance areas to the southwest. So you might consider these as potential neighborhoods or communities of interest. And the city is also divided into 2 middle school attendance areas. You have Judkins and Paulding. And lastly, there are voting precincts. So you can see how the county has divided the city up into different voting precincts. So all of this is potential ways that you can think of the city in terms of neighborhoods or communities of interest. So if you turn now to the interactive review map, that essentially takes all the data that you'll find from the story map and puts it all into one platform that gives you the ability to display whatever data layers you want to display at one time. So perhaps you want to check voter precincts and elementary school attendance areas, and maybe compare that with percent CVAP Latino. So there are a lot of different possibilities and combinations of data layers that you can play around with in this interactive review map. And like I said, eventually all the draft maps will appear on this interactive review map as well. And so you can display a bunch of the draft map options here at your leisure. If you go to the top left here, you can see the plus and minus to zoom in and zoom out. You can go to the legend and see what the different colors mean. So if I check elementary school attendance areas and go to legend, I can see what all of those symbolize. And you also have the ability to change the base map. So maybe you want to see how things look with the satellite imagery. So you have that ability as well. And you can zoom in and check out where the attendance boundaries are. And you can go back to the layers, and maybe you want to pull up let's see, we have zoning areas. So here you'll see the blues that signify the village, at least as the city defines it. And you can see that the yellows indicate where the residential areas are. And the oranges indicate more denser housing, like apartments. So yeah, this is a great tool to use if you want to explore the data some more. So I'll pause here and see if there are any questions about the first of these tools, the story map and the interactive review map.
If you have a question, you can raise your hand or just feel free to pop in and ask. Okay. Looks like no questions yet.
Okay. So next I will show the paper mapping tools. So the city actually sent this out in mailers. So a lot of you hopefully already received this and had a chance to send this into the city. But what this is the city has been broken up into population units. And you see the number indicates how many people live in each of these population units. And what you would do for this map is to draw on it 4 districts that have essentially equal population. And so you would use the population values to manually calculate how many people live in each district that you draw. And you see down at the bottom right, you would want the population of each of the 4 districts to be close to 4,533, with no more than a difference of 453 between the largest and smallest, because anything more than that is not considered population balanced. So you would draw 4 districts and add up the population numbers to make sure that each of your 4 districts is close to that 4533 figure. And then you can submit that by either dropping it off at City Hall, or you could take a picture of it and email it to public comment at arroyogrande.org. Now, there is actually another version of this paper map that is designed to be used with Microsoft Excel. And you'll see that it's the same population units that are on the basic paper map, but instead of showing the number of people who live in each of the units, it just shows an ID number. So starting at the top left here, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on, until eventually you get to number 48 down here. So there are 48 population units, and each of them has a specific ID number. And so you would use this paper map and draw the lines out like you would with the basic paper mapping tool. But then you would use Microsoft Excel as a way to do the math for you rather than manually calculate it. So let me show you what that looks like by going to the Excel spreadsheet. And I'll zoom in a little here so you can see it better. But what that looks like is you'll see on the, first you'll see an instructions tab, which will give you instructions of how to use this Excel spreadsheet. Then you click on the assignments tab. And what you'll see at the top there is how many people are in each district that you've created. And since I haven't assigned population units to any district yet, they all show up as 0. But if I were to use the paper map with the ID numbers and draw maps using that, then I could see which of the population units I want to be in a particular district. District 1, 2, 3, or 4. And so let's say I wanted population unit 1 to be in district 2 and population unit 2 to be in district 2. So I type in the yellow cells here, the number of the district I want to assign those units to. So let's assume I just want to assign all these units to district 2. As I do that, you'll see up here that district's 2 population is filling up, while the deviation from the ideal is going down. So for the sake of demonstration, I'm just going to assign all of these population units to district 2. And as I do that, you'll see that I get closer and closer to that ideal. So this number is getting closer to 4533, and this number is getting closer to 0. So now I am actually at 4,678, which is a little bit more than the ideal, about 145. And that's okay to be off a little bit by that amount from the ideal. So I could stop assigning districts at that point, assigning population units to district 2 at that point. And I can start, for example, giving these units to district 1. And while I'm doing this, I would be using that paper map with the ID numbers as a guide for which units I want to show up in which district. So now I've made district 1 to have 4,368. So that's 165 less than the ideal, but it should still be okay. So I'll put these in district 4 and put these in district 3. So now every single population unit has been assigned to a particular district, and you see how many people live in each of the 4 districts. So now I can go to the results tab and see if indeed the districts I created are population balanced. So I'll go here, and this is where you would enter in your name. And you would see how many people live in each district, its deviation. And you can also see each district broken down by the racial ethnic composition. And you can see that also by registered and active voters. So going to the right, you can see the percentage values. So number 4 has the greatest percentage of Hispanics. And you can see how far off in percentage each district is from the ideal. And at the right here, you'll see the total deviation. And that is the sum of the absolute value of the greatest underpopulated district and the greatest overpopulated district. So that would be essentially 3.64 plus 3.20, and that's 6.84. And you'll see that is in green because that is considered population balanced. Anything that is under 10% is considered population balanced. So this would be a good population balanced map. Now, it may not be good in when it comes to satisfying the other criteria, but just for the purposes of demonstration, in this case, it's a good one for the population concern. So any questions about how to use the Excel spreadsheet with that paper tool with the ID numbers?
Yes.
Linda, go ahead.
Yes, so I'm on my computer, and I'm in that program from the city, but how do I get to my Excel program?
Well, it would depend on, do you have Excel as installed on your computer?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll share my screen. So if you go to the district elections website, you'll see that there are paper mapping tools, and you would want to click on the paper map to use with Excel, which looks like this. And then you would also want to click on Excel spreadsheet to use with paper map. And so if you click on that, that should open up a download that you can double click on, and that will take you to the Excel spreadsheet.
Okay, and then how would you print out to actually visually be able to observe what you did when you assigned those 4 districts? How can you see that?
Okay, so if you take this map, then what you could do is just print it out as print out the PDF as on your printer as a paper map if you want to do it that way, and draw on the map. It's with a marker or something, and draw 4 districts, and then you would figure out the ID numbers that you drew as being in a certain district, and then you would type those numbers into the yellow boxes in Excel to see the population of that district.
Okay, so the example that you just did for us, can you go back to that and print it out so you can visually see what it looks like?
Yeah, if you want to print out the Excel spreadsheet, you have that option, or you can just see how it looks on your screen.
But we didn't see how it looks on the screen. All we saw was a spreadsheet.
I think she means, Daniel, if that spreadsheet will then populate a map that's more visual, where you can see how it's broken up.
Yes, that's what I want to see.
Yeah, so the Excel spreadsheet does not create the map for you. The Excel spreadsheet is to do the calculations for you. And so you would still need to draw on a map and submit that map, but the use of the Excel spreadsheet is to give you the reference, to give you the data, the information about how many people and what kinds of people live in each of those districts that you draw.
Yeah, so it looks like there's different tools to reach different people and how they like to view things. So you can either draw something with, markers and stuff on a paper map, or you can use the Excel sheet if you're into Excel and columns and numbers. And then I think Daniel's going to show you an online tool that will add up everything for you that you
Yeah.
can do directly on our website. But it looks like we also have a question from Brandon.
Well, just briefly, one more thing about Linda's question is you can actually just submit the Excel spreadsheet, like email the Excel spreadsheet with the assignments with the numbers typed in. And then we could use those assignments and make the map ourselves. And when we present it to the council, we would say, this map comes from such and such who used the Excel spreadsheet, because we'll be able to know what the ID numbers, what areas those refer to.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Brandon, go ahead. You have to unmute yourself. There you go. Oh, you were unmuted and now you're muted again. All right, Brandon, I'm going to unraise your hand just in case you didn't mean to do that. And then if you still have a question, go ahead. Oh, there you go. You've unmuted yourself. Go ahead. Okay, we can't hear you. So we'll move on, and then if you want to check in again and have a question, go ahead and pop in and ask.
Okay, so then I'm going to demonstrate how to use the district art tool. So we've gone through the paper mapping tools, and we've gone through the map review tools, the story map and the interactive review map. So the last one to demonstrate is the district art tool. So if you click on that link, you will be taken to this website. And so you'll see the tag is Arroyo G. And this is the dedicated district art page for your city. There are other district art pages for other jurisdictions, but you'll know that this is the right one if it says Arroyo G. And when you look down here, you'll see that there are two options. You can either draw a full plan with 4 city council districts, or you could just draw a community of interest or a neighborhood. If you continue to scroll, you'll see that there's a public gallery that shows maps that have already been made by members of the public. And you'll see there are so many that you have to click load more plans to see them all. And so most of them have drawn 4 districts, which is the goal. And you can see what each of those look like. And if you drew a map and want to build on it, then, or even build on someone else's map, you can click on one of these and it will take you to that particular map. It might take a little bit to load, but once it does load, you will have the ability to build and edit a map that was already drawn. And you will be able to make your own version of that map. So this is a map I didn't draw, someone else drew it, but I can edit it myself and then save it as my own. But it will still preserve the original one that someone originally made. So if you were to edit one of these maps, it wouldn't impact at all the original submission. You could just use it as a template. So I'll go back here and demonstrate how to draw a map from scratch. And first I'll demonstrate the red button, which is the community of interest or neighborhood drawing tool. And so once it loads, you will see a map of Arroyo Grande pop up. And here it comes. So you'll see all the streets and even some of the train and some parks and schools as well. And then you'll see these other lines, and those represent census blocks. So census blocks are the smallest unit of resolution we have for population data. So they don't have house by house because that would present privacy concerns. So these are the smallest units that we have population data for. So these serve as the building blocks for any district or any neighborhood or community of interest that you want to make. So I'm demonstrating here how to draw a neighborhood or a community. So you'll see that to the right here, it has a automatic name for the community, but I'm going to call it my own. I'll say something like the village. And I would describe it as the commercial and historic core of the city. And so you'll see at the top here that the current tool is the pan tool. And that's where you just click and drag to pan around. You could also zoom in and zoom out at the top left. So if I were to zoom in on this area, then I could start drawing a neighborhood or a community. So to do that, you go up here to the paintbrush tool. It looks like a paintbrush, and you click on that, and you'll see that it has a certain color and a certain brush size. And you can actually put your cursor over to see what that brush size looks like before you even fill in any blocks. So that might be too big of a brush size for my purposes. So I'm going to put it at 10. So once you have a good brush size, then you can start filling in these blocks. And all you have to do is click and drag. And once you finish, you let go of your cursor, and that's it. That is your neighborhood or your community of interest that you've defined. So perhaps you made a mistake and drew too big of a neighborhood, in which case you go to the eraser tool up here. So maybe I didn't want to select this block, so I click that and it goes away. Same with this one. So then that might, once you are satisfied with what you've drawn, then you can just leave it like that. And you also have the option to draw another community or neighborhood, in which case you click the plus sign that's to the right of the blue color. And now you see that you're drawing another neighborhood or community that has a yellow color. And so what you could do is lock already drawn communities. So as you do your cursor, you make sure that you don't overlap with what you've already drawn. But you can uncheck that and actually draw overlapping communities or neighborhoods if that's what you want to do. So make sure when you're using the community tool to please describe your neighborhoods, give them a name and a description so that we have a better sense of what you're showing us. And then you can use the inspect tool to see how many people live in a particular block. And once you are done, you can save your map by clicking the save button and giving it a name. So I'll call it Daniel Demo Neighborhoods and share it to gallery.
Daniel, it looks like we have two people with their hands up. Brandon has his hand up again. Brandon, if you want to ask a question, go ahead. Brandon, and we can't hear you. It looks like you are unmuted.
Is there any way to allow for a chat, or is that?
I was looking for that, but there's not a feature on this webinar. So Brandon, if you can hear us and we just can't hear you and you have questions, feel free to email me or call me. At the end of this, I can provide my email address and also our phone number. You can also stop by City Hall and I'd be happy to answer any questions as well. But Linda has her hand up. So go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, Daniel, could you show us again exactly how you would populate maybe the village, the blue section that you have just colored in? So we know how many people we have chosen there.
Okay. So if you go to the village and then go to data layers, actually evaluation. Evaluation will show how many people live in each community that you draw. So it shows the total population as compared with the whole city. And you can also see the citizen voting age, population, racial, ethnic breakdown.
Oh, that's really helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? So I'm going to go back to the gallery. And so now you'll see that Daniel Demo Neighborhoods has now appeared. And you'll see that it's a communities of interest file, as opposed to all of these, which are city council district plans. In fact, I think every single submission so far, except maybe this one, is, but I think that was intended to be city council districts as well. So I'll next show you the city council districts. And so it works the same way as the neighborhoods and communities of interest one, where you use the paintbrush tool and you fill in different blocks with a certain paintbrush size. But the key thing about using the district plan option, the purple button, is it gives you the population balance. So let's illustrate by going to the paint tool. I'll put my brush size at 10 and notice here that you have 4 different colors, and that represents the 4 districts. So the blue color, I'll draw something like this, where I'll just fill in my blocks and watch as I fill in this, this bar will get closer and closer to that ideal line. So you'll see that it has now surpassed the ideal line, and it has 4,835. So I might have drawn a little bit too big of a district, so I'll use the eraser tool and maybe take away a couple of those. And if I'm satisfied with how it looks, then I can check this to lock already drawn districts and go to the yellow one and start drawing over here. And I can see how many people live in this section of the city. So you can see that only 2,000 live here. So I would need to get some people from down here. So now I'm closer, but still not quite. So I'll take in this area. And that might be good enough. So next I'll do green. And I'm just doing this as an example. So I don't feel the need to draw anything like what I'm doing. It's just to illustrate how the tool works. But notice how the green district that I drew, it has way too many people. So I have to go here and take away some of that population. And so then I can go to the last color and draw the rest of the city. And so if you scroll down here, you'll see that the maximum, there is actually some unassigned population. So what you can do is check, highlight unassigned units. And the nice thing it will do is show with red borders the blocks that you forgot to fill in. So I'll zoom in and make sure I get those. I'll decrease my brush size. So if I want to get that one, I should make that blue. So I'll click the blue color and get that one. And here I'll go to the kind of lime green color and get that one. And I can make this area blue so that it's everything on this side of the freeway gets colored the right way. Oh, it's not letting me do that because I locked already drawn districts. So uncheck that, and then it turns blue. So now you'll see that the unassigned population is 0. So every part of the city is covered, which is good. And then the maximum population deviation is 6.5%. And that is that's a good number. We want it to be under 10%. So so this plan would be population balanced. The districts are contiguous. You could argue whether or not they are compact or respect neighborhoods or communities of interest, but this could, at least when it comes to satisfying the population and contiguity criteria, this fits the bill. So once you are satisfied with your map, then you can save it. And I'll call it Daniel Demo 4. And it will show up in the gallery. So when you go back to the district art page, you'll see that shows up Daniel Demo 4. So I think that is the basics when it comes to district art, but I'll pause to see if there are questions about how how that tool works.
It looks like Brandon has his hands up in it. I think I know what's happening. It looks like he's calling in. So Brandon, if you'd like to speak, you just press *6 on your phone to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear
Yay,
me?
you're here. I can hear you.
Hi there.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good.
So yeah, I mean, maybe it's partially also because I'm having some technical difficulties there, but I'm confused as to what you were just showing us with the colored maps a second ago and what you were doing just a couple minutes prior to that.
Okay, yeah, so if I go back to, oh, sorry, I don't know if you can see, can you see my screen, Brandon, when I share my screen?
Right now, yeah.
Okay, so you'll notice that there are two different.
And also, where do we find where you are now?
Yeah, okay. So if you go to arroyogrande.org/district elections, you will look at the right side of the screen, and under online mapping tools, you'll see Arroyo Grande District Art Tool. You click on that link and it will take you here. And then you will see under Start Drawing that there are two options. There are two buttons, a purple button and a red button. The red button is to just draw a neighborhood or a community of interest. So you're not, it's not meant for drawing a full 4-district plan. It's only to show
And
where you think
what's
certain
the value
neighborhoods.
for you? What's the value? Sorry, what's the value for you in doing that if we're just talking about redistricting here?
The value is because one of the criteria for drawing districts is to not divide neighborhoods or communities of interest. So this
Okay.
is a way that we can hear from the community about what important neighborhoods might exist so that we can be aware of those when considering what the best district plans are. So
Brandon,
Okay,
I heard
cool.
you say redistricting. So just to let you know, we don't have districts currently. We're at large elections right now. So this process is actually helping us draw the lines to even have districts to begin with. So just a clarification there.
Okay, thank you.
yeah, so, but if you click the purple button, that will allow you to draw a full 4-district plan. And of course, when you're drawing your districts, you can draw them in such a way that you respect neighborhoods or communities of interest as you see fit. But this tool is just helpful because we can actually see what the neighborhoods and communities of interest are and have them specifically identified for us. But you can do either of these or both of them, whatever you are most comfortable with.
Okay, and then so it sounds like all those maps that people are submitting then are being populated below that.
Yes,
Thanks.
you're welcome.
Okay, looks like we have Adrian with our hand up.
So this might be a question that you're going to talk about later, but in terms of like approval, I understand the city council is going to be receiving the maps and voting on the maps, but like, is a consulting firm going to be taking a look at the maps that are in consideration to just double check that we're meeting the criteria? Or basically, I would like someone to check my map to make sure I'm not, I didn't do it, be like not my intention or incorrectly. So yeah, what's that process like?
Yes, yeah, that's a very good question, and the answer is we do not weed out any maps. Every single submission that we receive, we will present to the city council. Now what we will do is, because there's a lot of submissions, and to make it digestible, we're going to group like submissions. So we'll say, we'll present a slide that has like 5 or 6 maps that I'll kind of do the same thing in just slightly different ways. And but before showing those groups, we'll show maps that we have flagged as being not in adherence with the criteria. So we'll say these plans that have been submitted are not population balanced, and these plans are not contiguous, and these plans may not respect certain neighborhoods. And so you are welcome to, when you're submitting your map to public comment at arroyogrande.org, you can say, hey, can the demographer check my map to see if it is population balanced or it satisfies the criteria. But we provide tools that allow you to know that on your own before submitting it. Like with the District R tool or the Excel tool, you can see if it's population balanced or not. So hopefully you won't need to ask for that to be checked. You can just, it can be apparent as before you submit it. And
yeah, I guess the main concern is the cracking of communities, and that's harder, I think, for me to wrap my head around to see if that's happening.
Yes, yeah. Well, we encourage you to refer to the story map to see where the concentrations of racial, ethnic, minority groups are, so that you can see if you might be doing that or not. But you're also welcome to ask for that check from us when you submit it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Linda, you have your hand up.
Yes, if we do realize, hey, I've made a mistake, but I've already made my submission, can we correct our own submission after the fact?
Yes, you can. So if I go back to the District R tool, let's say, just for the sake of argument, that you submitted a pigeon. So you can click on pigeon, and once that loads, you will have the ability to edit or update that original submission. And so once it loads, you can see, okay, I want to slightly change one thing. So let's say, oh, I noticed that I missed this little sliver of the freeway. So I want to put this in the blue district. And I'll make my paintbrush really small. And yeah, so it's a minor update. So once you do that, but you're satisfied with everything else, then you would save it and say pigeon update or something like that. Or I'll just put in parentheses Daniel demo, just to make clear that pigeon herself or himself did not do this. And then you share it to gallery. And so then you will go back to the District R main page, and you will see pigeon update. And so by putting update R2 or revised or something like that, then it will be clear to us that that is meant to be a revision of the original submission.
Okay, and again, can you tell us how to use as a template somebody that we think has done a good job already, but we might want to tweak it just a little bit?
Yeah, you would do exactly what I just did. You click
Okay.
on Pigeon and then use that as a template to edit it.
And then
But
rename it.
yes, but you'll see that Pigeon's original submission is still here, so you're not impacting in any way what they originally submitted.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, Brandon has his hands up, so if you could *6, then that'll unmute you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, it's going back and forth. So I guess I have a two-part question to kind of build off of some of those other questions. So I guess in terms of the process, this is just public comment. So I'm assuming that city staff are going to be submitting what they think it should be as well to the council for approval.
So
Is
we're
that correct?
working closely with our demographer, so Daniel with National Demographics Corporation, and they will be going through all the maps and grouping them and presenting all those maps to the city council. So I think Daniel can speak to this, but I believe our demographers may have kind of they might create a map that they think might be a good one, but we've received quite a few submissions so far, and I know they'll go through all of those before presenting them to council.
Yeah, so what we tend to do is if we identify a particular way to divide up the city that no one has thought about, we would want to offer that as an option, just to allow the council to consider all possibilities. But given the sheer volume of submissions we've received so far and are sure to receive in the months to come, there may not be such a hole or gap in the whole universe of submissions. So in that case,
Okay, I guess part of my
map.
Yeah, I guess part of my interest was knowing if, you were saying earlier that you're going to be grouping, like maps. Is there going to be, essentially some, favoriting of certain groups presented? It's going to be, a top 5 different type of, maps for consideration. Again, considering the volume of submissions, probably a lot to consume for, I guess deciding on that from the council.
Yeah. So we will do the groupings, just not in a way that we're judging a certain group as being better than the other groups, but we'll want to present the groupings to the council and then let them decide. Maybe there's a particular map in each group that is their favorite. And then let's say there's 5 groups. So then there will be 5 maps that come out of that. And then in the next hearing, then they will debate amongst those 5 as far as what is the best, and of course take input from the public as well as far as what the public thinks is the best. And we will provide analysis of the maps as the council asks for them, and we'll of course flag maps that we think do not satisfy the criteria.
Okay, and then I guess just last part of the question is there a map that your team has generated that we could go to make more modifications to, as opposed to starting like from scratch? Move, flex the boundaries plus or minus versus starting from scratch. And I guess similar question, do you know, as a part of the process, are they going to be, whittled down to, not a final map, but a close to final map that we could submit submissions to kind of do the same thing, kind of plus or minus the boundaries? If that makes sense.
Yeah, so any of the district R maps you can edit and use that as a template. And so you have that option if you don't want to start from scratch. And then later on in the process, as we whittle down to like a final 5 maps, those maps will be posted, and then people can have the option to, they can comment on the map, on those maps, and say what modifications they might want to be made to those maps.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Mhm.
Okay. Daniel, did you have more to show, or should we go into the next question?
So I think all that's left that I have is this final slide to ask members of the public about any neighborhoods we should be aware of and any communities of interest that we should be aware of as well, just so that we can get a sense of those as we get deeper into this process. And lastly, any questions about the mapping tools? Of course, there's already been opportunities to ask questions about that, but just any final questions, I can answer them here.
Yeah, so I think we can open it up. That's a good segue into the question we were going to ask about, for those of you that are here and would like to share with us kind of what you think would be a neighborhood within Arroyo Grande that we should include in our communities of interest. So go ahead and raise your hand if you have any specific ones that we should consider. All right, go ahead, Adrian.
So I live on, I guess, the west side of town, off of Farrell and on Bakeman. And the biggest thing is our neighborhoods live near multi-family housing. And I think that is an underrepresented group locally in local government. And I really want to make sure that they're, as far as renters and also living in multi-family housing, are represented accurately and fairly in local government. And then, of course, the Latino population, which is a voting population that's pretty small but makes up a significant, a not insignificant portion of the children in the area. And so, yeah, I guess being careful and mindful of not diluting that voting power for that small but very important population. So those two groups are the ones that I'm most concerned with. Even as a non-renter, I'm worried about that locally.
Thank you. That's very good.
And so your belief would be that the renter / multifamily community of interest would be a community of interest that would benefit from being within one district rather than being split between multiple.
Yeah, and most of them are in the district that I've put myself in, basically on the southwest part of town. Yeah, like between the Pike and Grand, I guess, and Halcyon, like that square, the bottom square. I think that's where most of it, and I actually will have to go back and look at that, the tool that shows us the densities. That was really helpful to see that. But yeah, I actually think most of the multifamily housing is in that district, or that possible district.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, anybody else have ideas? Okay, if you can also email me. I'll put up my email address at the end of this. If you kind of think of anything. Oh, go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. If everyone was done with, I guess, those submissions, I wanted to see, Daniel, if you could review your first slide. I wasn't able to have audio for that portion.
Which slide are you referring to?
Probably your introduction, basically.
So I I talked about the process.
Yeah, I guess up to your at the one that at large.
This one?
Yeah, up to yeah.
Did you want an explanation of the slide, or do you just want to see it?
Yeah, explanation.
Yeah, so this is just explaining the different election systems that a city could have. And Arroyo Grande has been using the at-large system. There's a hybrid system called the from district system, but the only system that is legally safe under the California Voting Rights Act is the by district system. And that is where you have a council member who has to live in a certain area and can only be voted on by residents of that area.
So currently, everybody just elects all of the council members. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so we're doing this to comply with the California Voting Rights Act.
Correct.
Okay.
Were there any other slides you wanted to see?
I think that's good. Yeah, appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, Charlotte Wilson has her hand up. Go ahead, Charlotte.
Yes, I'd like to know, first of all, could you take me to the place where we can actually access all of this? I came in late. And the other thing is the decision-making process in the end going to be by district or as we have it today?
So to answer your first question, you will get access to all the tools and information from arroyogrande.org/district elections.
Got it. Okay.
And then your second question, do you mean but action of the council?
When this is all finished, will we be electing only the council members / mayor that is residing in our particular district? Or will we still be voting on all participants of the election system?
So you will be voting for the candidates within your district. So it will be different. However, the mayor will still be elected at large.
Okay. And will this be the same for school board? Because I know school board is doing the same situation, same principle. Daniel
could probably answer that better than me.
Yeah, we are actually also working with the UCMR, and they are transitioning to by trustee area elections.
By district.
Yeah, so that it's going to be the same thing where you would vote for just one trustee who lives in your trustee area.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other questions on this portion? Daniel, you had another point on there, right? We can move on.
I see Brandon still has his hand up, or was that just from earlier?
That was from earlier.
Okay. Yeah, so the last slide I had was just to solicit any feedback on neighborhoods and communities of interest and take any questions. So if there's no more feedback or questions, then that's all I have.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question if I could.
Sure, go ahead, Charlotte.
Could you tell me why this process even exists? What happened that created our need to only vote by district as opposed to what we've been doing since incorporation of the city?
Would you like to take that, Jessica?
Sure. So we received a notice of violation a few years ago, a violation of the Voting Rights Act, and it required us to review our options if we wanted to spend. I think Daniel had a slide at one of the public hearings. It'd be millions of dollars most likely to defend it, to kind of fight that violation, or we could go forward and do this districting process. So we presented that to council a couple of years ago and decided to move forward with this districting process. So that's kind of the the basics of it. We could provide more information if you're interested.
Hey, one other question, if I could. When was this act presented? When did this new state regulation take place?
I believe the California Voting Rights Act was passed several years ago, like in the mid 2000s, and but it only really started to get enforced in a way that forced many cities like Arroyo Grande to make this switch in recent years, when certain attorneys were going around and suing cities as being in violation of the California Voting Rights Act. And so Arroyo Grande was one of the cities that received a letter. Jessica knows the exact date they received it, but that is what's kind of spurred on this tide of many hundreds of jurisdictions making this switch. It's not just Arroyo Grande, it's all sorts of school districts, cities, special districts, statewide.
And it looks like our city manager, Whitney McDonald, is listening in today, and she has her hand up and she can provide you more details about that. Go ahead, Whitney.
Thank you. I guess the one additional point I would make is that it largely stemmed from a change in case law. So our courts locally in the state of California essentially created a new interpretation, more or less, of the California Voting Rights Act. It made it easier for people to successfully challenge the way that elections were being held. So it was kind of a function of the courts interpreting the law in a certain way, along with giving people kind of that greater opportunity to bring claims. There's a procedure set out in the statutes for how these claims are brought forward to cities like ours. And so that's where that notice of violation and letter came from, submitted by an attorney on behalf of a client. So it's kind of a combination of things, but really, I think, started from a change in the way that the courts were interpreting the law.
Thank you, Whitney.
And Brandon, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know, Jessica or Whitney better answer this, but is there a short, succinct reason that, or I guess violation specifically that the way we were doing things?
I can maybe take that.
Or lead violation.
Right. So essentially, I think that the intent behind the process and the allegation of a violation is if you have a certain, like a kind of big enough population of a minority group that hasn't been elected to your city council historically, then the fear or concern is that the kind of majority population makes it harder for those folks to have representation on their local city councils. And so by creating a district, it may present a greater opportunity for that demographic to become elected to sit on the council, or in the instance of a school board, it could be the school board. As Daniel mentioned, this is occurring throughout the state, not just for cities, but also school districts and special districts as well, even including an airport district. So it's kind of sweeping the state, and at the end of the day, the intent of it is to try to help create an opportunity for members of a population, of a demographic that weren't previously on a council to have kind of a greater shot at making it on.
Which the answer.
Go ahead, Adrian.
I don't know if you know the answer to this because we were trying to quickly Google it, but our current city council, are they all living in the northeast part of town? Do you know that offhand?
So I can tell you there's the mayor and 2 of our council members. Well, 2, so the mayor and a council member actually live on the same street, and then we have another council member a street over. So I could see
Right.
that.
And then a significant portion of our population is on the opposite side of town. So I think just like to people on the call, that's something to consider as we're approaching this by district election, that our representation is coming from the one street in Arroyo Grande right now.
Any other comments or questions?
Yes, I do, Charlotte.
Go ahead.
Could you tell me if, when the school board does their districting, Daniel, because you'll be manning theirs as well, will our boundaries be pretty similar?
No, because when we're talking about Lucia Mar, we're talking about a much larger territory that includes the other 5 cities and down to Napomo as well. So the trustee areas are going to be much larger, and they have also different criteria that they use. They aren't under the same state regulations as cities are.
And as you go through that process, as I'm following that process as well with the school board, that will be clearly defined with the presentations that you're going to be doing with them. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we'll be having a redistricting session with Lucia Mar School Board, and I'll be presenting data and maps to them as well.
Do you know what that date is?
I don't know if that's been scheduled yet, but I think last I heard it might be in November.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so does anybody have maps or anything you want us to look at? We can do a share screen kind of thing. If you had a paper map, we could do, I know it's virtual format's a little harder to do something like this, but we'll make it work. If you have a paper map you want us to look at, you can turn on your video and hold it up to your camera if you like, or if you have more questions about the online tool. Okay, it doesn't look like it. So any other questions about the process, the timeline, how this will go forward? Okay, it looks like Nell. Go ahead, Nell. Unmute yourself.
Sorry. So what is the deadline for turning in the maps?
February 4th, I believe, right, Daniel? Is that what you presented earlier?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
We also have on the website, on our districting elections webpage, there's a calendar that you can click on, and it gives you kind of a timeline of the process and the different hearing dates and target dates coming up. So that might be helpful too when you're planning out public comment or submitting maps. It's on there on our website. All right, go ahead, Brandon. Brandon, did you have another comment?
Sorry, I was on mute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Daniel, as far as the Excel tool, is that usable on any other spreadsheet tools like 123 or Google Spreadsheet?
Yeah, so we have made it available on Excel, but I believe that you can you may be able to go to Excel and export it to a Google Sheet. But the thing is the Excel spreadsheet has 3 different tabs, so just be mindful of that.
Okay, good to know. I think it's just from an accessibility standpoint, I definitely understand that most people have Excel, but not everybody. So yeah, thanks.
Okay, Janice, go ahead. Janice, you may have to unmute yourself. Okay, while we're waiting for that, Charlotte, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Is the county going to be doing the same districting situation with the unincorporated areas? And are there any cities that are incorporated in the county that are not doing this?
So the county, they have a board of supervisors, and they already have districts. So they will be doing redistricting, because redistricting has to take place after each census. And so they have their own process. So you could go to the county website to find out more information about that. But those board of supervisors districts, they cover both incorporated and unincorporated territory. And so you take the whole county and divide it by 5. And so the whole county is covered by a particular supervisorial district. And so when it comes to incorporated cities, we know Arroyo Grande is doing it. Grover Beach is doing it as well. I know Paso Robles is doing it. I haven't heard of other cities, but
San Luis Obispo, Atascadero, and Morro Bay are not doing this process. Paso Robles went through it at the last election, so they have districts. So it's Arroyo Grande and Grover Beach are going through this for the first time for 2022.
Not Pismo Beach, correct?
Right, Pismo Beach is not. Right, Daniel?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Pismo Beach, I don't believe is.
Not that I've heard.
Thank you.
All right, Janice, do we have you here? Okay, I'm going to lower your hand. Go ahead, Brandon.
And Daniel, back to the Excel. I just looked up on the website there. It looks like it's saved as a .xlsx file, which is Excel file. If you were to post that as a .csv file, that should open up in any spreadsheet software, FYI.
Okay, so then we'll actually, once we get the official data, and we expect that within a week or two, we'll be sending that a new Excel spreadsheet to the city, and when we do that, we'll give them a CSV file as well.
Awesome, thanks.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to make it clear to people that all of the data, the total population data that you've seen in the either the paper mapping tools or the online mapping tools, these have been using estimates. And so we will receive the official data soon, and then all that data will be inputted into the District R tool, and we'll put out updated paper mapping tools as well. So the practical effect of that is the maps that you made with the estimated figures may not be population balanced based on the official data. So you may have to go back and tweak your maps, but what we'll try to do is reach out to people whose original submissions are no longer population balanced to give them the opportunity to resubmit.
All right, Janice, looks like we have you back. Go ahead. If you're calling in, Janice, you can comment by hitting *6.
Mute. Okay, now
there we
can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, I had to switch devices. I couldn't, it's a webinar, so it's a little complicated for me. So what happens if nobody runs in a district? I mean, what that is likely to happen,
That's a
or that
very,
somebody totally unsuitable runs. I mean, with no qualifications, that, you know, what happened? I mean, I know we don't have a choice. We have to do this, but I can see a lot more problems with this method than at large.
that's a very good question. So obviously it's up to the voters if we do receive qualified candidates. Qualified candidates means they get all their signatures, they get all their paperwork in time, they are registered voters. That makes them a qualified candidate for the ballot, and then it's up to the voters to vote on their representative. If there are no candidates in that district, the council would need to appoint to fill that seat.
Wow, that's that. And this is what the state is demanding that we do. We have no other choice. We have to do this.
Essentially, I don't know if you heard earlier that we had received the notice of violation, and there's a lot of, okay. So it's, you know,
and so fighting that violation is so expensive that we are hiring companies to come in and show us how to do this. We're still spending quite a bit of money to make this change, I'm guessing.
I don't know if you are curious, Janice, I can send you after, or actually you can see it on our website, the public hearings. Daniel did a presentation.
I was there.
Okay, so you saw it. There's a slide on just what the jurisdictions are spending on fighting this kind of thing.
But what are we spending? What are we spending on hiring consultants and doing all? What are we? I mean, I'm sure we're spending quite a bit too.
It's public knowledge. I can share this. Under 25,000 is what we have with our consultant contract. And then of course there's the outreach expenses, but I think we're well under, the several $1 million that it would take to fight something like this.
Yeah. Okay, I hope it works. I wish I lived in the county instead of the city, I'll tell you. Thank you.
Thanks, Janice. Any other comments? Brandon, go ahead.
Yeah, I just sounds like kind of heading towards wrapping up. I just wanted to comment on just the format and recommend for future that we figure out how to enable like a chat function for people who want to comment in that way or having trouble with audio. And then second is, because we are using technology, I think even people who do this all the time or are pretty technology savvy still have technological issues that would come up with a meeting like this. So I definitely appreciate starting on time and respecting everybody's time in that manner. But just because we are dealing with technology, it might be useful to wait a couple minutes to get started.
Yes, thank you for that. I know this is not an ideal format for an interactive public workshop, so thank you for bearing with us on that. We're hoping our next workshop, as we're kind of wrapping up this, is October 28th. And we're hoping, we'll see what happens with COVID-19 guidelines, and if we could hopefully do it in person or have a hybrid option, that's our hope. But I definitely have written down to try to get a chat feature on this. I'm also going to put this up for you guys. Go ahead, Brandon, sorry.
I was saying one of the numbers you posted online to do audio by phone didn't work also. So
okay, thank you for that.
Yep.
Okay, I'll check that number, and then I'm going to, if there's not any other questions or comments, I'm going to put up my email address and my phone number, as well as our district webpage. Oh, go ahead, Linda.
I just want to thank you to both Daniel and Jessica for this really informative and helpful meeting. And I felt that I had all my questions answered and there was a lot of clarity given. So I appreciate it.
Agreed, seconded. Thank you for your time.
Thank you
Mhm.
all for
Thanks.
being here. I appreciate the comments too. So again, here's my email address if you have any suggestions or comments that you didn't want to raise with the whole group. So feel free to email me and or call me. Thank you so much again.